In the Granada Trilogy, Egyptian novelist Radwa Ashour paints one of the most haunting portraits of loss, identity, and endurance in human history. Through her lyrical prose and emotional depth, she revives the final days of Muslim Spain, when the great city of Granada, the last stronghold of Al-Andalus, fell to the hands of the Christian monarchs in 1492. Yet this is not merely a tale of a city's fall. It is a story of people who refuse to let their memory die. Across three interconnected novels, Granada, Mariama, and The Departure, Ashour takes us deep into the heart of families torn apart by faith, exile, and the slow erasure of their world. We walk beside Abu Ja'far, the humble bookbinder who guards knowledge as flames consume the libraries of Al-Andalus. We witness Salima, his brave descendant, holding on to language and memory as weapons of resistance. Every generation carries a fragment of Granada's soul, keeping its story alive against time and tyranny. Ashour's masterpiece is both historical and timeless. It reminds us that even when empires fall and cultures fade, the human spirit continues to write its truth on paper, in hearts, and in the whispers of memory. As you listen, let these voices from centuries past remind you of the resilience hidden within every loss and the light that survives even in exile. If you believe in the power of books to awaken wisdom and keep history alive, join our growing family here on WiserReads. Subscribe, share your reflections in the comments, and let's keep the flame of knowledge burning, one story at a time. The fall of Granada and the beginning of the tragedy. The story opens with the fall of Granada in 1492, the last Muslim kingdom in Spain. What was once a flourishing center of art, science, and coexistence collapses under the rule of Ferdinand and Isabella. The citizens, stripped of their freedom, watch in silence as the banners of Castile rise over the Alhambra, marking not only the end of a political era, but the beginning of a deep spiritual and cultural tragedy. Ashour captures the suffocating atmosphere of defeat. Mosques turned into churches, Arabic banned from schools and homes, and scholars forced to burn their own books to survive. The people's faith and traditions, once vibrant and public, are now hidden behind closed doors. Amid this silence, the community of Granada stands divided between submission and resistance. The emotional core of this opening lies in the slow death of identity. The Andalusians find themselves foreigners in their own land. Mothers whisper prayers in secret. Children grow up without their ancestral tongue, and elders cling to fading memories of a golden past. Yet beneath the grief, a quiet defiance begins to stir. A promise that even if Granada's walls have fallen, its spirit will endure in the hearts of its people. The house of Abu Ja'far the bookbinder. At the heart of the story stands Abu Ja'far, a humble yet wise bookbinder, whose home becomes a sanctuary of memory and knowledge in a world that seeks to erase both. His craft, binding and preserving books, is not only a livelihood, but a sacred act of resistance. Through his hands, the wisdom of centuries survives the flames of censorship. Abu Ja'far's house gathers his family, apprentices, and neighbors, a small community that reflects the soul of fallen Granada. Within its walls, stories are told, prayers are whispered, and Arabic words are cherished like forbidden jewels. He teaches his loved ones that identity lives not in power or titles, but in the courage to remember and the will to endure. As the Christian authorities tighten control, banning Arabic books and forcing conversions, Abu Ja'far's quiet strength shines brighter. His home becomes a fortress of learning, a living library that defies oblivion. Through his character, Ashour celebrates the dignity of the ordinary man who fights tyranny not with swords, but with ink, memory, and love. Abu Ja'far's story marks the beginning of Granada's long resistance, a testament to how one man's devotion to truth can preserve an entire civilization's soul. Life after the fall. After the conquest of Granada, life for its Muslim inhabitants becomes a slow, painful descent into oppression. What begins as promises of tolerance from the new Christian rulers quickly turns into a campaign of forced conversions, humiliation, and erasure. The once thriving Andalusian culture, its language, art, and faith, is pushed underground, surviving only in whispers and memories. Radwa Ashour paints this life after the fall, not through battles, but through the silent endurance of ordinary people. The citizens of Granada, stripped of their rights, struggle to adapt while clinging to the remnants of their identity. Families hide Arabic manuscripts, teach their children forbidden prayers, and disguise their traditions under the gaze of suspicion. Every street, every home becomes a battlefield between remembrance and fear. Yet even amid despair, small acts of courage bloom. Women pass on songs in secret, old men repeat verses of the Quran from memory, and craftsmen inscribe hidden words of hope into their work. The fall of Granada may have ended a civilization, but Ashour shows that the human spirit resists extinction. Life continues, muted, broken, yet defiantly alive. The people of Granada may have lost their kingdom, but they preserve their dignity and faith in the unseen promise that history will one day remember them. Hassan, the woman who carries memory. In the heart of Radwa Ashour's trilogy stands Hassan, a woman whose strength lies not in weapons, but in remembrance. She becomes the living archive of a lost world, holding in her mind the stories, names, and sorrows of generations erased by conquest. Through her, memory becomes both burden and salvation. Hassan witnesses the destruction of her homeland, the exile of families, and the forced conversions of her people. Yet she refuses to surrender to silence.
She tells her children and grandchildren of the Granada that once was, the sound of its call to prayer, the glow of its gardens, the wisdom of its scholars. Each story she tells becomes a thread stitching together a shattered identity. Ashour portrays Hassan as a symbol of female endurance and historical continuity. She keeps alive what the conquerors cannot destroy, the soul of Al-Andalus. Her memory transcends time, binding past and future in a single act of resistance. Through her, the trilogy reminds us that even when a nation falls, it survives in the hearts of those who remember.
The Moriscos, between identity and disappearance. This chapter explores the tragic transformation of Granada's Muslim population into the Moriscos, those who outwardly convert to Christianity but secretly preserve their Islamic faith. Through their struggle, Radwa Ashour captures the deep conflict of living between two worlds, one forced by power and one kept alive by memory. Once free citizens of Al-Andalus, the Moriscos become outcasts in their own land. They adopt Christian names, attend church, and obey the king's laws by day. But when night falls, they return to their true selves, reciting Quranic verses in whispers, washing for prayer in secret, and celebrating forbidden festivals in hidden corners. Every act of faith becomes an act of rebellion. Radwa Ashour shows how this dual existence slowly consumes them. The constant fear of discovery, betrayal, and punishment eats away at their sense of wholeness. Children grow confused, speaking Spanish at school and Arabic at home, unsure of who they truly are. The elders cling to fading traditions, while the young begin to forget. Granada becomes a land of masks, where truth survives only in silence. Yet, in their quiet defiance, the Moriscos embody the resilience of a people who refuse to vanish. They carry their lost homeland within them, proving that identity can endure even when stripped of land, language, and freedom. Through their suffering, Radwa Ashour reminds us that to remember is to exist. The Forbidden Language and the Sacred Secret. In this powerful section, language itself becomes a battlefield. After the fall of Granada, Arabic, the heart of Andalusian identity, becomes outlawed. Speaking it, reading it, or writing it becomes a crime. With every banned word, a piece of their culture dies. Yet beneath the surface, the people of Granada refuse to surrender their sacred tongue. Radwa Ashour transforms language into a symbol of spiritual resistance. Families hide Arabic manuscripts behind walls. Mothers whisper lullabies in the old language so their children will not forget. Even when forced to read Christian texts, they secretly trace Arabic letters in the margins, tokens of defiance against erasure. The sacred secret lies in their unbroken link to the divine through words. Arabic is not merely communication. It is the voice of faith, prayer, and memory. Its loss
would mean the loss of God Himself. The struggle to preserve it becomes a holy mission, a silent war waged through ink and breath. Through this theme, Radwa Ashour reminds us that conquering armies can destroy buildings and burn books, but they can never silence the language of the soul. The forbidden tongue continues to live, hidden, sacred, and eternal, carried in the hearts of those who refuse to forget who they are.
The burning of books, the death of knowledge. In one of the most devastating moments of the Granada Trilogy, Radwa Ashour recounts the burning of Arabic books, an act that symbolizes not just the destruction of knowledge, but the deliberate erasure of a civilization's soul. What begins as royal decrees and religious edicts culminates in towering flames that consume libraries, manuscripts, and centuries of wisdom. For Abu Ja'far the bookbinder and the scholars of Granada, these flames are not only physical, but spiritual. Each book represents a lifetime of devotion, thought, and discovery, the very essence of Al-Andalus. As the pages turn to ash, the people realize they are witnessing the death of memory itself. The conquerors aim to replace truth with silence, rewriting history to fit the new order. Yet even amid despair, the story reveals moments of courage. Some risk their lives to hide manuscripts beneath floorboards or in wells, determined to save fragments of their past. The act of preservation becomes a sacred duty, a final stand against oblivion. Ashour's vivid prose captures the horror of watching a culture vanish in smoke, but also the stubborn beauty of resistance. For though the books burn, their words continue to live in the minds of those who remember. The fire may destroy the pages, but it cannot extinguish the truth they carried. The Great Exile. The Great Exile marks the final, heartbreaking stage of Granada's tragedy, the mass expulsion of the Moriscos from Spain. Families are torn apart, villages emptied, and thousands forced to abandon the only home they have ever known. Ashour portrays this exodus with deep compassion, showing not just physical displacement, but the exile of identity, language, and belonging. The journey is brutal. Caravans move through mountains and seas, carrying old people, children, and memories wrapped in cloth. The exiles take with them little more than faith and grief. Behind them, their homes are seized, their mosques desecrated, their past erased. Ahead lies uncertainty, lands where they are strangers once again. Ashour's storytelling transforms this tragedy into a universal reflection on exile itself. The Great Exile is not just a historical event, it is the ongoing wound of every people who have been uprooted, silenced, or forgotten. Yet, amid the sorrow, there is resilience. The Moriscos carry their heritage in their songs, prayers, and stories, refusing to let their identity die. Through their journey, Ashour reminds us that exile can strip the body of land,
but it can never exile the spirit. Granada may be lost, but it continues to live in the hearts of its scattered children.
In Salima, the bookbinder's last daughter, Radwa Ashour gives voice to a new generation born in the ashes of Granada's fall. Salima, the granddaughter of Abu Ja'far, the bookbinder, inherits not wealth or freedom, but the burden of memory. In her, the quiet resistance of her ancestors transforms into courage and clarity, a woman's strength rising amid a world that wants her to forget. Raised among the ruins of a vanished culture, Salima grows up hearing whispers of the greatness that once was. She watches as her people live double lives, Christians by force, Muslims in secret, and vows to preserve the truth that others hide. With every word she writes and every story she tells, Salima becomes a living archive of her people's pain and hope. When persecution intensifies, she faces impossible choices: to stay silent and survive, or to speak and risk everything. Yet Salima's bravery lies in her refusal to let memory die. Even as books are burned and names erased, she holds on to her identity through storytelling. Her voice becomes the bridge between generations, the echo of Abu Ja'far's ink, and the seed of a future that refuses oblivion. The memory that never dies is the spiritual heartbeat of the Granada Trilogy. It explores how memory, carried through generations, outlives conquest, exile, and death. For the descendants of Granada's fallen, remembrance becomes both wound and salvation. Ashour portrays memory as a living force that defies time. Even as centuries pass, the stories of Abu Ja'far, Hassan, and Salima continue to breathe through the songs, prayers, and dreams of their descendants. The conquerors tried to erase their world, but memory, like a buried seed, keeps returning, reclaiming space in every heart that remembers. This chapter is both lament and triumph. It mourns a civilization that vanished, yet celebrates its survival in spirit. Memory here is not nostalgia. It is a weapon against oblivion, a declaration that what once was still matters. Through remembrance, Granada lives again. In words, in faith, in the rhythm of language that refuses to die. Ashour's message is universal and timeless. Nations may fall, languages may fade, but truth carried in memory endures beyond generations. The memory that never dies reminds us that to remember is to exist, and through remembering, Granada never truly fell.
Generations on the line of fire, Radwa Ashour traces the enduring struggle of Granada's descendants, those who inherit not land or titles, but the weight of survival itself. The story moves beyond the first wave of conquest, revealing how the trauma of loss and exile is carried through families like an unbroken chain. Each generation faces its own battle, fighting not with weapons, but with memory, language, and faith. The children of the Moriscos grow up under suspicion, learning early to conceal who they are. They live between fear and pride, forced to bow outwardly to the oppressors while secretly passing on their heritage. The older generation carries grief. The younger carries restlessness. Between them lies the tension of endurance. Ashour paints these generations as living witnesses of a war that never ends. Though the swords have fallen silent, the conflict continues in hearts and homes, in the struggle to keep their story alive. Every child who learns a forbidden word, every elder who whispers a lost prayer, becomes a soldier in this invisible resistance. Through their courage, the author reminds us that history is not made only by kings or conquerors, but by ordinary people who refuse to vanish. Generations on the Line of Fire honors their persistence, the quiet heroism of those who keep standing on the burning edge of memory so the truth of Granada will never fade. Granada that lives within us serves as the emotional and philosophical conclusion of Radwa Ashour's trilogy. It reveals that Granada is no longer just a place, it is a living memory woven into the identity of all who remember its fall. Centuries may have passed, but the essence of Granada endures, in stories, in language, and in the yearning for justice that transcends time. Ashour reminds us that though the physical city was conquered, its spirit migrated into hearts across generations. Every person who dreams of freedom, dignity, and belonging carries a spark of that lost paradise. The narrative shifts from history to reflection, showing how the legacy of Al-Andalus continues to shape identity, culture, and moral conscience. Granada becomes a symbol of every homeland that has been taken, every memory suppressed, and every voice silenced. Yet, its survival in memory transforms tragedy into victory. Ashour's final message is one of hope. Granada lives wherever there is remembrance, resilience, and love for truth. The city's towers may have fallen, but its soul endures, in words, in faith, and in the eternal longing for a world where beauty and justice can coexist once more. Through this timeless vision, Ashour closes her masterpiece with a whisper of triumph. Granada was lost, but it was never gone.
Deeply reflective, warm, and philosophical, with slow pacing and soft emotional emphasis. Listening to the Granada Trilogy by Radwa Ashour is like walking through the ruins of a once glorious city, guided by voices that refuse to be silenced. It is not just the story of Granada's fall. It is the story of humanity's struggle to remember, to belong, and to survive. Through the lives of Abu Jafar the bookbinder, Hassan, and Salima, we witness the unbreakable thread that ties generations together, even in exile and loss. Ashour's words breathe life into centuries of silence. She shows us that while empires may crumble and books may burn, the soul of a people endures. Her characters carry the essence of Al-Andalus within them, the language, the prayers, and the memories that the conquerors could never destroy. Each chapter reveals how identity can survive beneath ashes, how faith can live in whispers, and how love for one's heritage can transcend death itself. This trilogy is not only a historical tale, it is a meditation on the resilience of the human spirit.
It reminds us that every loss contains a seed of hope, and every memory kept alive is an act of defiance. To listen to the Granada Trilogy is to feel history pulse within your own heart, to hear the echoes of those who once lived, dreamed, and refused to forget. If stories like this move you, if you believe that wisdom, memory, and hope can still change the world, then join our family here on WiserReads. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and let your voice become part of this journey of remembrance. Together, let's keep the flame of knowledge alive, one story, one heart, one listener at a time.